Welcome to Poemalogues. My name is Dasha Kelly Hamilton, and I am going to be your tour guide through a conversation about power. So Poemalogues is an opportunity to gather people who wouldn't be around a table, a virtual table anyway, to have discussions about the lives in between the lines. So I want to invite you not to be nervous about the idea of a poem. As Milwaukee Poet Laureate, this was an opportunity to get people together to talk. And if we can throw... Welcome to Poemalogues. My name is Dasha Kelly Hamilton, and I am going to be your tour guide through a conversation about power. So Poemalogues is an opportunity to gather people who wouldn't be around a table, a virtual table anyway, to have discussions about the lives in between the lines. So what's happening with... So I don't know how to make that stop. I want to invite you not to be nervous about the idea of a poem. As Milwaukee Poet Laureate, this was an opportunity to get people together to talk. I can also turn off. Welcome to Poemalogues. My name is Dasha Kelly Hamilton, and I am going to be your tour guide through a conversation about power. So Poemalogues is an opportunity. I don't know who's still talking to me. I turned off Facebook, and I can still hear it. So we're all going to power through this power moment together. So I don't know how to make that. I want to invite you not to be nervous about the idea of a poem. As Milwaukee Poet Laureate, this was an opportunity to get people together to talk. Does someone have their speaker on? I don't know where to mute. We're going to do this together, people. I turned off the... Can you still hear me? Not my green room? Oh, okay. I'm breathing, gathering my zen. These gadgets are not going to be the boss of me. They try and know. And when I tell you about this Zoom, anyway, power. I should change my whole theme, talk about the power of these machines. But what we are doing is finding a way to fall in a conversation with each other. And the folks that we talk to are poets, are not poets. And again, it really is the fact that a poem is a piece of art that someone put together to capture a moment, a memory, an opinion, a position, a hurt, a joy. And not surprisingly, for every feeling and thought that you have had, someone has written a poem about it. And you could write one too, but that's not what this is about. So this is about finding ways to find a common discussion. So for me, with power, the invitation was asking people, what was the first thing that came to your mind when you thought about power? And for me, for this discussion, the first thing that came to my mind was the power between a parent and child. So we was in a discussion recently and someone said, and not having children, but I do understand that you do have a certain power over your kids. And I'm going to use the air quotes, not that a parent wouldn't have uttered the same words, because often we do forget that these are people, little humans, who we are parenting, not little people that we own, right? That we power, that we lord over. And I'm talking in between that range of not to the extreme of young people who are being abused and neglected, but in that everyday normalcy, the power dynamic between a parent and a child. I go all the way to being in the grocery store and seeing that toddler getting cussed out in the aisle, at the store, to the middle school kids who aren't able to discuss their experience, how they feel because of the adults around them, whether it's their parents or their teachers or bigger brothers telling them how they should feel and what this is happening. And on one hand, we know being liberated into your adulthood, part of that is being a kid, but some of those dynamics don't change. And having conversations with super, super, super grown peers and friends, and we all just by nature of how this parenting thing is set up, are still processing through love and identity and sovereignty and power. So having those relationships where parent, child, mentor, student, you are acknowledging that person and not wielding power, but when you're officially in charge of whether somebody eats or not, it's kind of hard to lose track. Kind of can be hard to keep that in perspective. So that was where my thought went, thinking about power. And I poked around and found a new poem piece that speaks to another angle of that experience, but I'll share that at the end. So I would like to invite our first guest to the screen. And as you hear things that are interesting to you or something you want to add to the conversation, you are invited, you out there, you're invited to engage also. You just need to comment on the thread. And I see someone made a comment here, probably to try to save me from myself. With this technical war. So you're able to be a part of the conversation too. But first of all, I'm going to invite Miss Rachel McKibbens to join me on the screen. How are you?
Hanging in there, doing the best I can with what we got.
Things that are interesting to you or what has to happen. We're all in this together. So somehow I don't know how to make it stop.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I can also hear my Facebook Live thing. And you're hanging in there doing the best you can, what you got.
Okay, yeah, exactly. And then Morley reports that we can't hear the Facebook only real time. Right.
I think I figured out how to figure it out.
Wow.
I can. So this is going to be a crude joke. I'm just going to acknowledge all the voices that are happening in my head right now. So tell me a bit, what did we interrupt with you?
I mean, really, what I'm trying to do now, understand I am not just a small business owner, but also, self-employed as a poet who does specific work around sexual assault recovery as well as prevention. And so that all of that was shut down due to, COVID-19. I have lost the ability to go and sort of go to different colleges and have these frank conversations with young folks. But also I'm raising now the remaining 3 of 5 kids that I have now kind of homeschooling, which is fake because I'm not, it's not like I'm sitting here with a chalkboard or anything. We're legit learning stuff. But what's interesting about, I think, this situation and having to close my restaurant and kind of redistribute my thought processes is how truly I'm able to be more present for my family in a way that I've not for the last 2 years. We opened our restaurant, a little over 2 years ago. Really, I really appreciate this particular topic because I think that I've been a mother since I was 17. That was my superpower in the world. And to have kind of let that get diluted by having to be more concerned with the business aspect of my life has really been, kind of it was a painful process for a while, but now I'm back in it. And now I'm just trying to manage my own. Also, I'm bipolar. I have PTSD. I have a lot of stuff going on my brain. So to come into this moment and to think about power, the first thing I thought of really was about the non-man body, about the power of having the ability to push a life out of my body. And I was just thinking about it in that way, because really probably 2 years ago, I would have thought more about, patriarchal power and white supremacy, and which to me is more of a weakness than it is a power, but it's been given reign over the world. And so I think I probably didn't even answer your question. That's where
we're rolling it out. We're rocking it out. We're rocking it out. I think it's interesting you make that switch from, or I heard you say, is different from thinking about, like you said, this oppression,
right,
and the other side of that negative. So as what is that power as this woman body? But has it been an empowering switch, or did you find it just made the patriarchy not feel so patriarchal? How did you?
Well, think of it this way: is that capitalism is no longer kind of driving my worldview. Not that it didn't. Of the business partners that I'm partnered with in this, I'm sort of like the one person ethics committee in a way. I'm always pointing out ways in which we can be better, because it's strange to be a business owner, because the word owner is very problematic to me. But what I consider too is that like all of my staff are pretty much, we're all equal. Like we don't really have hierarchical positioning within it. And so I'm able to wipe that out and get more grounded into mi familia, which is such an important, and what I consider a far more fruitful positioning in the world. But we are very, in the ways in which we run our business, it's very equity driven. We're here to liberate Black and brown folks. We're here to keep our food at a cost that doesn't price out, you know, our own people. And it's important to be like, for me as a queer Chicana craft cocktail bar owner, to subvert the narrative of that and have, you know, Black bartenders, femme bartenders, non-binary bartenders, you know, the people who aren't ordinarily given those positions, that space. So in that way, I built a family, and like the point is not to hold reign over them, to not be their boss, but to give them the ability to take care of themselves, by themselves, take care of their own people in that way, which is, I think, far more important than throwing glitter on something and hoping that you know, it's all fixed. So I get to step back and be very, very present in how I can do that same kind of work with my own kids. They're learning a lot every day by it. I had a very, I think, important conversation yesterday with my son, who just turned 18, valedictorian, senior president of, you know, his high school, doesn't get a graduation. And I'm thinking about the importance of ceremony for me, not even just as like, you know, Mexicans, and ceremony is very big to us, of course, but it's just really important that we have frank conversations about the impossibility of being an ethical millionaire. It's not possible. If you have $1 million, you shouldn't have $1 million. And so I think too, I want him as, you know, a predominantly white presenting person in the world who is going into technology. He's going to be learning, you know, like that's his field, like computer programming, technology, gaming, and all that. Like he's going to have access to things that, say, his girlfriend, who's from Puerto Rico and who is raised very differently, you know, than he is, how that's going to shape their relationship and teach him how to handle, say, like monetary, right? Like him having like more access to money, and how you can, as the person with that level of privilege and power, be able to like subvert that, figure out ways to identify those things and correct them as best you can in that positioning. So as a parent, my power has been to teach my kids these things, to let them understand and have access to as much as I can provide for them, while maintaining a level of like, I don't want to say struggle, because it's just really hard to have grown up in the hood, grown up in gang violence, and then to have kids who cannot possibly ever tap into that mindset. And then I worry, are you going to survive this world?
That's exactly the question. Two things that come to my mind in hearing you. One, with your position as a boss, you know, not exactly a co-op, but I understand in terms of mindset. You wanted to feel like we're in this together, although, you know, I sign checks, we're in this together. So, and then with your kids, I want to know how did your teammates respond to that mindset? You know what I mean? Because you find some people you would imagine that will be refreshing, but it can be too much freedom for some people. And go ahead. I have my second question.
I think that for the most part, and I think it's why we have the level of loyalty we do among our staff, which is actually very tiny, but they make more money than us. We don't take home a bigger paycheck than them. When they saw that I immediately applied for SNAP the second I had to lay everyone off and I closed up shop, they were like, word? Like they didn't understand.
Like, yeah, math is real.
Like, we're not even working class, we're working poor. And I think that a lot of people get mixed up when they see that you're a small business owner. Because we are doing everything so ethically, it does genuinely screw us sometimes.
Isn't that incredible that doing things ethically and with an intention and organically has a different yield?
Absolutely.
Now with your kids, so I'm going to take you back to
Sure.
And all the good advice that the grown-ups tried to give you because they wanted to prepare us for the world that was out there. So how are your kids receiving all of, this blueprint you're trying to hand to them? Do they see it that way, or are you a parent trying to tell them what to do?
Well, no, I think that, they understand it because they also run, the Pink Door Writing Retreat, which is exclusively for Black and brown non-men writers. They understand because they even just peripherally, by hearing the stories of other folks from across the world, nation, all of it, by recognizing their positions of privilege, and also being in community with others and developing kinship through storytelling, which is essentially what happens at Pink Door, as well as Poetry and Pie Night, which is a series I run. Everything I do has that kind of intention for you to be of witness to each other. I think that that's a really empowering moment to, or a constant sort of I don't want to call it a transaction, but when you receive someone's story and you hold it into your body, that will shape how you respond to others. It just does. That's what I think is the impactful part of I don't want to say forcing white audiences, but white audiences get exposed, right, to the stories of Black, trans, femme, non-binary people with so many hyphens, right?
Hyphen, slash.
But it actually, I think that when you are required to marinate in someone else's life story, it truly does. If you're a good person, you're going to sort of you're going to lose that discomfort that comes at first because it's an unfamiliar thing. And you're going to figure out how you can best reshape your privilege to become a benefit to others. And so that's the work that I've always been doing. And what's interesting about the word power is that for me, the first thing I thought of was an image of a femme with a gun, and which is also a very patriarchal, violent, almost there's so much stuff wrapped around that. But I think about subversion. I think about how the poem I chose has been banned in a lot of colleges because the writer, who is a woman in a leather jacket with very short, white, cropped, bleached hair, with pointy snakeskin boots and literally rose-tinted Ray-Bans, she'll read it directly at the men professors, and it's alarming to them.
Whoa.
And I think because there is that type of climbing into a position that hasn't been normalized in society, it messes with you. But what it also does is it gives a lot of the non-men folks in the room this permission to envision for themselves this ability to write themselves into a sharper existence. And move it to a powerful point. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say it's helpful when we're able to see that we really are in this conversation together, right? So conversation of all the isms, it's not just the aggressors or oppressors. We all are figuring out how to do this better. So if you can please share your poem.
You ready to hear it?
Not your poem, but the poem that you found.
Woo! All right. So Jan Beatty wrote this poem. It is from her book, Red Sugar. The first time I heard it was at Sarah Lawrence College, and half of the room got up and left. And I was like, wow, what kind of power is that to have a poem stir that kind of discomfort? And really, I was like, where is the discomfort really? Is it in the object that that is brought up in the poem, or is it that it's just incredible. So here we go. Shooter. I shoot the old man who followed my 11-year-old body on Smithfield Street because I smiled at him, because it was Christmas. I shoot the man who jacked off on the bricks of our house, put a ladder to my window when I was 12. I shoot the professor who said my work was illogical, then used me for publicity when I won an award. The businessman who wanted to talk about my teenage breasts. I'm loading and reloading. The guy who walked up to me when I was a cashier and asked about my hole. I hope you still like me when I say the gynecologist stuck his tongue down my throat when I was 16. The writer who reads his gang rape poem to a room of women students. I'm putting my finger on the problem. The men who pose as feminists, the predators, the rapists, the bullies and thugs among us, my uncle who tried to kiss me when he was drunk, my 6-year-old neighbor who grabbed me when my parents weren't home. It was my fault. A man named Roy who wouldn't stop when I said no. He said, shut up. He said, now. He taught me to love the trigger. I'm shooting the cook who grabbed me from behind the restaurant kitchen. The famous poet who said, there are no great women writers. The boyfriend who left his handprint in black and blue. The men who say, we're too serious, prettier when we smile. I'm smiling and shooting. The shrink who tried to lock me up, the boss who gave me a ride home, wanted a blowjob, pushed my head down, the poet who said, I didn't praise him enough. Here's one for you. The restaurant manager who told me to grow a thicker skin and wear a skimpy uniform because really, we have an attitude. We need to lighten up. I shoot all the men I've left off the list so I don't have to worry my little pretty head about it. Jan Beatty. Da da da.
Thank you. Right, ta-da, and the bow, bow. I'm going to have you definitely come back and talk a bit more about power. I'm going to invite our next conversation to the screen. And we've got a lot of your story, but I want to hear a little bit more about the Pink Door retreat as well.
Got it.
I'm going to have you chill in the green room, and we're going to invite Mr. Rob Smith all the way from down the street to make his way to the screen. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Can't complain. How are you?
I'm not bad. You know, complaining isn't so bad though.
Yeah.
I mean, everything in moderation can work.
Well, I appreciate this. This is right what I needed today on a hump day. Get me through this week. Right on.
Little bit of thinking and pondering and maybe fixing a few things along the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what were you in the middle of?
Well, I was in the middle of several things. Earlier today, we did me and my buddy Adam Carr, we did a lecture on Milwaukee history, the open housing marches. I work over at Marquette University in the history department, direct our Center for Urban Research, Teaching and Outreach. And so I was just Facebook Living earlier today. I'm doing a double duty on Facebook Live today. The earlier was history. This is arts. I want to thank you because in this particular moment, we have to take these deep breaths. You know, we really, really do. We need to spend just a little bit of time centering a bit of our own humanity on our own terms, because so much of the outside world is dictating to us what we can and cannot do.
That is very
what
true.
we should or should not do. And so right now, today, I needed this. I appreciate you. Right on.
No, absolutely. I'm glad you could make time for the conversation.
No
And I like the idea too of, yes, as much as we have to pay attention to what's happening and seek out what's the new possible, there is just some settling, and we're going to be instructed, right?
Sure.
Some of those things will be more evident. So
Yeah.
I know for me, it was those weeks was trying to grasp and shape and mold. And speaking of power, in fact, the piece I ended up finding was about powerlessness. But that's not always a weakness. Right. It feels that way when you're not in control of what's happening. So that's an interest. I really appreciate that take on it too.
Yeah.
So tell us your story. What's your whole life experience in like 90 seconds?
You know, my life experience has been an examined life. I get a kick out of exploring all the nooks and crannies and crevices that I didn't know that I could find. I like to say I turn over every rock. More often than not, that's been a benefit to me. In some cases, it's created its own set of challenges, but I'd rather explore and learn something new instead of buying into tropes and allowing myself to be overdetermined by others or other opinions. And that requires what really gets me to this conversation about power, a particular type of intestinal fortitude to overcome, to push back, to challenge. And a lot of that is internal. To spend just a little bit of time undoing, unlearning, rethinking, questioning. All of that to me is where, as I really pose myself the question, what did power mean to me, or what is power? It's the ability to marshal this internal force that some of the great superhero movies are written comic books and all that, but it's we have this life force, we have this energy that we have to spend each and every day of our lives trying to maximize. Some days we can't do it as well. Some days you need a break from being a superhero, Dasha,
Did you find?
Not you.
Did you? I was like, huh? No, not me. That's it's a mature journey. And 2020 always makes it really smooth, looking backwards. So I just be curious if that was something that was always part of how you move, questioning and figuring things out, or did that get you to have a kind of peace and a purpose?
Yeah, a little bit of all of that. As a young person, we all are on our respective journeys. I think as I moved into adulthood, I was much more intentional about that. I was really committed to those kinds of endeavors. I think that what really pushed me into the world of understanding this particular expression of power was going through some very tough times, scenarios that I did not think I would ever find myself in, whether it was battling depression or the loss of loved ones, or family reconfigurations for any number of reasons. Being a parent, you talked about parenting. One of the things that I learned about parenting wasn't necessarily at all related to the control or the domination of a child. It was how children expose our most serious weaknesses. Children expose our deepest insecurities, and along the way with loss and trying to be the best dad I can be, a very wonderful woman told me something that changed my life and put a lot of what I was dealing with in perspective. And she said, you just have to find compassion. That's the mark of strength. That's the mark of power. How compassionate can you be? In the face of anger and frustration, it's easy to react aggressively. I'm built for that.
I want to say, and you get it's happened many times, even as grown as I am. I still have these moments where I look at my parents, and I'm able to, of course, appreciate, oh, this is what was going on in your mind when I was worrying you about getting to Girl Scouts. This is what was happening in your life when I'm, worried about, I'm mad because I can't get the Jordache jeans.
Right.
And just appreciating how much we filter as parents, your stuff, your history, your all those pieces to show up.
Right.
So I can appreciate that.
And so my journey has been one, really of taking so much of that experience and molding it into something compassionate, leading with compassion. The true revolutionary, a wise person once said, is guided by enormous feelings of love, and my goal for I turned 50 about a year ago. And so my goal for the second half of the century of the 100 years is to be as loving and compassionate as I can be. And, I can always open up that other box. That box is always sitting there. But my intentional actions in the world is to be the most compassionate person I can be. And that stems from an intestinal fortitude that I've that's churned over the years. I've had to sharpen and mold that. You have to put the work in to be the best person you can be. And I'll be honest with you, as Facebook Live is going out to the world, I'm arrogant about that. I'm a good person, and I'm gonna hold myself to that. I'm going to be the best person I can be. And when I fall short, I'm going to apologize. When I hurt people's feelings, I'm going to apologize. When I'm not the best person that I can be, I'm going to apologize. But I'm not going to allow myself to avoid my responsibility of putting love and compassion in the world. And that's, you know, folks will test you. Dasha, they don't want you to be a good person. They don't want you to be loving sometimes. They're going to push you to places you don't want to go. And, you know,
You didn't think you want to go, or you really don't want to go?
Well, you know, it's sometimes you feel good after you snap on somebody. Let me be honest about that. You know, you do get a little bit of unhealthy reward from that. But I'm not going to let Satan do that to me no more, you know.
What is something, this is all, if you were to get, because you deal so much too with in your academic work, when in these conversations of power and how the abuse of power shows up.
Right.
But in this human space, what is and I love that you're talking about just an individual person, the power that you have as a person,
right?
To govern yourself, and what advice would you give? Like, what do people mistake about power? Their own power.
I think most people don't know how much power they have. Because we do think about power in terms of the evil of, for example, what our state legislature and our state Supreme Court and our federal Supreme Court did to folks in Milwaukee on April 7th. Like that is a particular kind of ugly power, you know. But what I saw on April 7th was a beautiful expression of people's power to say, you know what, you can say and do whatever you want. Whatever. I'm gonna get out here and I'm gonna exercise my rights. And I'm getting choked up thinking about it. You know, to see people. Can we swear on this?
Yes. We speak all the languages.
All of the so-called people who think that they have power, fuck you. You know, fuck you. And that does not stem from an anger or hostility. That fuck you came from a place of love for our neighbors, love for our belief in democracy, love for us wanting to be better than those who are in power currently are willing to express. Shame on them. Shame on them. And I can control, I can manage, I can muster all the love and compassion I need to direct my anger and frustration in the most healthy and most productive ways possible. Although if I see a couple of them cats, I might step to them. I mean, you know, I'm a work in progress. Ain't that what they said?
And we all, like you said,
yet.
This is the art one. What's art in history? Work in progress, art in history. So what poem did that lead you to? You know,
it's a classic. It's a poem that I have read in some of my darkest, lowest, most difficult moments. I read it and recite it regularly. It's something that I've been sharing with people in this particular moment because, folks, we have everything we need already. You know, one of the things, Dasha, we came prepared fully. We just had to tap into it. We just had to find it. We just had to unleash it. We just had to find the abilities to light them chakras and get all that stuff moving, get that chi going, and find the power within us. My poem is Invictus by William Ernest Henley. Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade. And yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. Invictus. Thank you so very much. I needed this today. I appreciate it.
You went with a classic. You absolutely went with a classic on that one.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We're going to have you come back and keep talking more about power. I'm going to bring our third guest to the screen, we are welcoming Miss Morley. How are you, ma'am?
Oh man, I'm so good. I'm so grateful to be here and hear and listen and feel what is being said in this
We're
gathering.
in this space.
Thank you for gathering us. I've been
Thank you.
thinking about how we can't hold hands and hug each other, but we can touch voices.
No,
So we're
thank you.
touching voices, and it's a blessing. Thank
What
you.
were you in the middle of to make space for this discussion? And if you can turn up a little bit your volume, possible?
Yeah, is this better? Is
Yes.
this better?
Yes.
Okay. What was I in the middle? I was in the middle of the open sky, actually, again. And I'm out here. I'm from New York City, and I live in a building with lots of other people. And I was on tour. I'm a musician, and I was on tour in Chicago, passing through Chicago, and everything stopped. So I've just been staying here. And I came out a little bit, hour and a half outside of Chicago on farmland with a friend of mine, and it's very beautiful and very new to be under the open sky. Yeah,
And so how long have you been there?
we've been staying here for a couple of weeks now.
Okay. And I was curious. I have my husband, he's a Philly boy, and he was raised and as he calls it, dirt road, Georgia.
Yeah.
And he would describe when his cousin, coming from the city and getting used to the noises, getting used to all of that open sky and the air. And just like a really healthy relationship, you would not think that you have to get used to such a beautiful thing. But how did you? Oh, so a weekend, is it novel still? Do you think you'll miss the sounds and the people and the city?
Yeah, well, I feel it's and because of this time we're in, I feel just so much deep love for New York, and a lot of friends of mine moving through this challenging illness, and I've lost quite a few friends. So I feel almost like a, a deeper and slower energy of a connection to the city. Usually, because I grew up there and from there, my connection is like fast and it's fierce and it's like it's vibrant. And now the feeling is like a slow, warm circle, like just powerful, very sacred feeling. And it's very powerful. It's powerful. Speaking of
Very
power,
much so.
yeah.
So tell us you're a musician, but what's your whole life story? Give us the whole thing, like in a whole 90 seconds.
My whole life story is that I am from New York, and I think what's really impacted me most about my childhood is that I had an opportunity to go to the United Nations School, and I lived in Jamaica, Queens, and I experienced, um, you know, every single day sharing a meal in a different friend's home, or with a different friend from a different country. And when you share people's food, you share people's music, you share people's way of prayer. I grew up going to mosque, synagogue, church, temples, all kinds of. I heard at one point. I remember when I was little, I heard this. I heard the same song in all these different places of worship, but with just different words.
Hmm.
And so, in a way, I was able to find my reflection in what we're taught as the other, in this limited language of English, this domination, this language of domination and separation, and a lot of this, the way this language is structured. And then to hear how people would speak in English, translating from their mother tongue and what they would say actually in their mother tongue, and then that being translated, that wouldn't be a natural way of speaking in English, and hearing the poetry of that.
Hmm.
And it just affected my ear, I think. And I became a dancer. I danced in New York. I went to the High School of Performing Arts in DC, to Ellington. I came to Alvin Ailey, had a knee injury, got into choreography. From choreography, I met the great Max Roach. He came to see a student performance, and I wound up working with him, and then going into this whole journey of working with music, and now I've become a musician. So, and I used to write poems, and I used to write my feelings down when I was younger. I also experienced homelessness as a teenager, and I literally would write myself into the next day. I'd be sleeping maybe on a bus or at a friend's home or non-friend's home, or I snuck into the high school to sleep sometimes. And I'd write down how I'm feeling on paper bags, about the side of my shoe, my jeans. And I didn't realize I was actually doing art therapy. And now I get a chance to work with young people, creative writing, songwriting. I work with trafficked women. I work with uh, incarcerated people. I work with formerly incarcerated. I work with war veterans. So the medicine of self-expression is, I think, absolutely a real power. And right now, with what we're going through, and the amount of the collective grief and the collective awe of the transient nature of life,
Hmm.
and also the collective awe of the kindness and compassion and fierce love that's being displayed and shared and shown there, it needs to be expressed. It needs to be expressed in any way we can, in any way we know how. No one has to ever hear or see it, but we
That's
need to
true.
keep in touch with that. And a dear friend of mine said to me the other day, because I was feeling very full and I didn't know what to do with it. And I usually have something to do with it. Like I can sing, I could write. She said, "Girl, sometimes you just need to feel everything."
Hmm.
And just let it go
Right.
and cry.
Because we
You
talk
know?
a lot about working between these two places. Like we were talking
Uh-huh.
earlier. Yeah, we know
Yeah.
what day by day means. Oh, no, 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 no,
Right.
no. Rona says this is what day by day means. So that thing of not just of really being in a place and feeling it, reminding that you thought you were, or there's definitely a deeper way a deeper opportunity to tap into those things.
Yes, and also I feel like this time, in terms of power, it's teaching us how young we are. We are so young. I look out there at this open sky and the stars and the clouds, the blades of grass, the trees, the bees. They've been here so much longer than all of us, and we can get so human centric, so anthropocentric, and we miss out on so much. And now we have to slow down. We're forced to slow down and tap into becoming what we actually are, which we were discussing earlier, which is that we're just I'm just feel like I'm just an element. I want to just practice being an element. I go outside, just to even look outside my window and breathe the air and feel like tap into the fact that I'm just another element of nature. I don't have dominion over nature. I'm not, no, I'm an element. I'm an extension of the water. I think about power, I think about water. I think about power, I think about air. I think about wind. And the
Hmm.
fact that the wind, the sound of the wind, the actual pitch, the note is determined by the length of grass through which it travels. The sound of the wind is determined by the length of the pine needle through which it travels. I just learned that from listening to On Being with this wind geek specialist. It was so beautiful.
Yeah.
And so, what is the wind of our collective consciousness right now? And is it determined by the length and the height of our courage, the height of our surrender, the length of our surrender, the length of our determination? I don't know. I think we can determine the pitch, this actual sound. Collectively, we just can't give up. But the negative, old colonial last wag of that dragon's tail, they're just coming. They're coming for it. They're coming for it, and it's because they know they're losing this height, this power of collective love, and energy of true, like, elemental human love is getting louder. And that's why they're coming in all different directions throughout the world. I feel
Oh
like,
my.
in terms of politically, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Socially and politically clear. It's like so clear as day because they're scared. But we have to keep the power and keep the strength.
There's a digital event we was invited to, and the description or the title of it was like basically COVID in the black light, and that visual was so perfect because it is revealing and exposing all of the things that we've known. Like you said, these are things we've known, and we've had this collective charge and challenge to address it. Now no one can pretend like they're not there. So I especially like the similar thing that Rob was saying, less of, not just what this has, or what Rachel was saying, not just what the patriarchy has done, but the power of as a woman's body. So not just what all these isms have done, but the power of us to be that wind.
Yeah.
To be that wind. And I almost, don't get me wrong, I would love for us to be able to go out and I know handshakes are going to be a thing that we talk about in history books now, but hugs may come back into style. But I almost want us to sit still a little bit more, right? Because I know me personally, I've just gotten past the oh shit of it all, and more actively being able to receive those kind of gifts, that this really is a power, that really is a song, this really is a pitch. And I just had someone just come and pick up all of my plastic grocery bags because they're distributing food, throughout the city. So like you said, what people are doing to make sure that people are okay, is a gorgeous thing. And it's not just the folks who always were going to do that anyway.
Right. Yeah, we're an extension of each other. We are each other's only home. Like if you miss that, then you miss that.
And hopefully it'll feel more real once we're off punishment and we're allowed to go back outside again, that we can kind of carry that through. So if you put your imagination into play, so similar idea about that wind carrying something forward, this collective consciousness, how would you like to see that carried forward? Like, what would that look like if we continued?
Nonviolence.
One more time.
Nonviolence. Aggressive nonviolence, like just militant nonviolence. Like I don't mean real militant, but I'm saying
no, definitely.
So like non-negotiable, nonviolence, gentleness. It's like our biggest power. Like like Rob just said, like that it's I wrote it down, but it's the power is our ability, how compassionate we can be in response, to what we see and what we feel. And again, we're just so young. I think, and if I think about the power of the wind, like I think about, I want to bow to the wind. Like I'm so much younger. And today a friend of mine, she was speaking to me about the different languages. She was teaching me that the grass doesn't speak English; it speaks the language of the grass. That the tree has its own language, and she comes from a very long lineage of understanding what nature is saying, and it's about, for me, I just bow my head and just try to develop that third ear to listen. Especially if, like, what's the next way to go to be safe, to survive this? I mean, like you say, like what's the next thing is going to happen? You want to stay still a little longer. I hear all that, but I also hear from myself, like, because I'm always ready to go, and I need to like be okay with not knowing what's happening. We actually do not know. We're inside of not knowing, and inside of that is a surrender, and there's a grace and a humility, and it's very painful to lose people we love and not be able to gather, because we're vibrational beings. Music carries vibration, sound carries vibration. If we can't be together, and if I can't let myself break like I would if I was at a funeral, let that part of me just break and fall and collapse, because I feel someone's going to at least try to catch me. Someone will be there to come and say they're there because they're feeling the same way. But if I'm by myself and I'm grieving somebody, it is very difficult, but it also gives rise to opportunity to connect to my loved one who's passed on in a new way that somehow feels ancient. Because like Rob said, we are prepared.
We are prepared. And I love that we are ancient. So what poem did that lead you to?
Humility and like confidence. That's all I wanted to say. That, sorry, it's the balance of humility and confidence to move through this time individually, by ourselves, and staying in place, and also together. I have my glasses so I could see my poem.
Very smart. Very smart.
I have to try. Okay. I chose this poem, For Nothing is Fixed. It's by James Baldwin. And I hadn't known about this poem, but I last week performed it for, I put it to song for Universe in Verse. That's a beautiful gathering created by Maria Popova. And so here's the poem, For Nothing is Fixed, by James Baldwin. Forever and forever and forever, it is not fixed. The earth is always shifting. The light is always changing. The sea does not cease to grind down rock. Generations do not cease to be born, and we are responsible to them because we are the only witnesses they have. The sea rises, the light fails, lovers cling to each other, and children cling to us. The moment we cease to hold each other, the moment we break faith with one another, the sea engulfs us and the light goes out. Excellent. James Baldwin.
Thank you. I'm going to, I know I see you applauding, Rachel. I'm going to bring everybody up from the green room. We did a thing.
Yeah.
Power was a thing. Thank you all for
on.
making the time. And I always love and not surprised, but definitely how we all enter these conversations. We have a similar heart space, but there's so many nuances, which is why when you start with poem as a challenge, it definitely gets you to a space to be say the things that, like you said, Rob, that you may not be invited to say out loud, or to have those conversations about things we know, Rachel, and we give a chance to give language to it, and not just in your own head and while you're washing dishes, but with other folks. So definitely, what are some things that stuck out with you with the discussion today?
Who are you asking? Are you asking
all
me?
of you?
I think that, I think the important thing for me was to be reminded. I mean, I'm always trying to be compassionate, but at the same time, I'm real tired. And, you know, I think Morley and Rob both speaking on things to kind of help recenter my abilities and to probably pay closer attention to my intentions, which are primarily good. Like, I think I'm a good person. However, I was raised by the fist, and it's my most natural response is to want to fight. And so to pull back from that and to attribute that as not a weakness, but as a power, like similar to what you said earlier too, Dasha, really delivered me into myself in a good way right now. I really needed to hear all of y'all's words.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. Absolutely. The opportunity to sort of wade through these immense feelings and these feelings that are in this very difficult moment so comforting. You know, there was comfort in our conversation today. There was a lot of warmth in our conversation today. It was sorely needed. And I think, you know, one of the things that just before this, me and my son went out to get some fresh air, and we were driving, and he said, "Man, Dad, everything looks so big now." You know, so this whole moment has changed our perspective on things. Like there's a different cost at work that we can't quite put our finger on. You know, there's other costs at work, and to have the moment this evening to just sort of get back into some really, really loving feelings, you know, and to think about power as the love of a parent, or the love of the business owner. They're the boss. What's up, boss lady? And to hear another.
I was going to say, to your point, there's something to all of us feeling, not being, but feeling small. Like when Marley, you were talking about, you know, we're so young, and on one hand, you're reminded, oh, we're just this tiny little speck on this huge rock floating through space, and that's supposed to be comforting, but it also reminds you you're a speck on a rock floating through space. But to be reminded, like Rob said, that everything feels so big, and the animals are, you know, taking over not taking over, but returning to human spaces that we've shooed them away with our shopkeeper brooms before now.
Yeah.
And to embrace that, Rob, like you said, not to be afraid of our size, because like Morley said, we are, compared to everything else, we just got here. But haven't we been spoiled to think that we should ... So I like this idea of internal power. That we knew that, but it's a different charge. Like you said, Rob, not to use our power to go and to write in an email and a protest, but use our power to be wind.
It's like we've suffered from a case of mistaken identity. Who we are as human beings. That's, you know. And I just wanted to say to Rachel, I wrote this down. You said, everything I do has intention for you to be witness to each other. When I put revive, but I think that was a autocorrect. But someone's story, basically to hold someone's story in your body, and then that's the way somebody can actually experience their own. And because I believe art and poetry, you know, reveals oneself to one's own dignity And you can't really understand your own dignity if you can't see it in someone else. And so I just want to say, when you say you think you're a compassionate person, I know you are compassionate. You have so much compassion that is you said everything I do has intention for you to be witness. I said, God, thank you, Dasha. Thank you for bringing me together with these people today.
That's right.
That's a digital church dance right there, Rachel.
Listen, as a witch, I'm here for it. Like, let's do it.
Too much. Well, I have the piece that I found that I'll share, but I definitely want to ask you, insightful, warm souls, if there is a power word or another lingering thought that you wanted to share with the folk.
I love y'all. I mean it.
Same. I feel like we're kin now. Like, we're family. Like,
that's right.
Let's take this on the road, y'all.
The one thing I would say,
all right, let me go to this piece. This is a piece that I searched around. I was trying to find a piece about child rights, and that took me down a lane I wasn't so much interested in. So this is a little left of center, but I really like where it ended. So powerless. I couldn't stop it. Couldn't stop something that had been happening since before I was born. I couldn't take the cigarettes from your mouth or the lighters in your pockets. I couldn't tell you I knew what was going to happen. No one knows what's going to happen. I watched it resting for years between your fingers, watched the wisps of smoke twirling and dancing through the air like a dream of Swan Lake, the deep fire that glowed with every breath, waiting to snuff you and take it out. I didn't know that it was too late. I didn't know that it was twirling like spider webs, endlessly spinning and extending inside of you, turning everything black, turning everything to ash until you were ash on my grandmother's bedstand. I couldn't stop it. I couldn't save you. And I'm sorry. And that was by Tay D. And that has been our conversation about power this go round. And we'll have a discussion next week. We're going to move to body right here at 4:30. And I'm going to have this whole Facebook Live thing worked out. But I wanted to thank my guests. Thank you so much for sharing your stories and being so honest and vulnerable in this discussion. And we are definitely welcoming your poems. So if you have an idea of power and it takes you to a poem, you can email it to poems@theretreatmke.com. And other than that, be good to one another and recognize our power to be. And we'll see you all here next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Y'all be easy.
Bye, y'all too.
Thank you.